Watching Sky News at 1, live from Halifax, where the Prime Minister has just launched the Conservatives' general election manifesto. Promises to cut migration, get the right to Brexit deal for Britain and to build a strong economy all feature. But Theresa May admits it won't be an easy ride.
The next 5 years will be among the most challenging in our lifetime.
Plus a social care shake-up. The party promises no one will have to sell their home to pay for it if they have less than £100,000 in assets.
Also ahead this lunchtime, Rolf Harris to be released from prison and appear in person at his indecent assault trial.
A former FBI boss is to lead an inquiry into Russia's alleged meddling in the US election and investigate any ties to Trump's team.
And as the 20th anniversary of Princess Diana's death approaches, Princes William and Harry remember their mother with a special award.
Good afternoon. This is Sky News at 1, live today from Halifax. Our main story. Theresa May has just launched the Conservative Manifesto here, saying that the coming years will be the most challenging in our lifetime. The Prime Minister listed 5 great giant challenges, which she says now face the UK. The need for a strong economy, Brexit, social divisions, an ageing society, and a fast-changing technology.
Today, as we face this critical election for our country, I launch my manifesto for Britain's future. A manifesto to see us through Brexit and beyond. A plan for a stronger, fairer, more prosperous Britain. A plan to seize the opportunities ahead and to build a country that our children and grandchildren are proud to call home. It is a detailed programme for government, rooted in the hopes and aspirations of ordinary working people across the land. That is what this manifesto offers, a clear plan to meet the big challenges we face together, a credible, deliverable programme for government around which the country can unite, a plan that, unlike the offerings of other parties, is upfront and honest about the scale of the task we face. It identifies the 5 great giant challenges that we face as a country. 1, the need for a strong economy. 2, responding to Brexit and a changing world. 3, tackling enduring social divisions. 4, responding to an ageing society. And 5, facing up to fast-changing technology. And it sets out what we will do to address each one. I've negotiated for Britain in Europe, and I know that the best place to start is to be clear about where you stand and what you want. That's why I have been clear that we do not seek to fudge this issue, to be half in and half out of the EU. The British people made their choice. I respect that. We need that strong and stable leadership now more than ever. For the next 5 years will be among the most challenging in our lifetime, a defining period for our nation, a turning point for Britain that will determine the kind of country we are and the kind of future the generations that come after us will see. That is why now, more than ever, Britain needs strong and stable government. So join me on this journey. Come with me as I lead Britain. Strengthen my hand as I fight for Britain, and stand with me as I deliver for Britain. And with confidence in ourselves and a unity of purpose in our country, let us all go forward together.
Well, these are some of the key policies announced by Theresa May. People won't be made to pay for their care if their assets are less than £100,000. That is a increase in the current level of just over £23,000. Winter fuel payments worth up to £300 will be means tested, meaning wealthy pensioners will lose their automatic entitlement to the money. There's an end to the triple lock on pensions. Theresa May reiterated her party's commitment to reduce net migration to the tens of thousands, something she didn't manage to achieve as Home Secretary. And there's an end to free school lunches for all infant pupils in England, a coalition proposal backed by the Liberal Democrats. Instead, free breakfast will be offered for those in primary years education. And crucially, there is no repeat of the 2015 pledge not to raise national insurance, income tax or VAT. Only VAT is frozen. Well, with me now are our political editor Faisal Islam and also our political correspondent Beth Rigby. Welcome to you both. Faisal, Mrs May said there's no such thing as Mayism, but then she said this is my manifesto, and a strong emphasis on her leadership, but also her philosophy in this manifesto.
Yes, I'd say that. There's quite a lot of political theory and philosophy in here. Actually, someone told me that it was from Halifax, where the famous English working class study was done by E.P. Thompson. So perhaps that's a reflection on that. But yes, she in this manifesto talks about rejecting right-wing libertarianism, talks about there being no ideological crusades, wants to be seen as a kind of straightforward leader to some of the voters that haven't voted Conservative in the past. I think that's the key. But I think the general story of this manifesto is loosening some of the constraints of the gimmicks put in the 2015 manifesto. You talked about the triple lock, you talked about the tax lock. I mean, we're just picking up stuff. It's quite a dense document, I have to say. It's longer than we expected. We thought maybe it would be a bit like the
84 pages, I think.
Well, yeah, but I haven't done a word count, but it's definitely longer than the Thatcher 9,000. It's probably not quite as long as the 30,000 words we got in 2015. But you're picking up things as we go along. And here's something that's quite, 2 years ago, David Cameron would have just said, we're going to keep tax low. This one says, keep taxes as low as possible. Just a bit of Mayism in there, because it sort of didn't want to make a promise that we could then sort of point fingers at in a couple of years' time. But we'll point back that it was low as possible. There is the option in this document to use the tax system if funding requirements emerge. For example, we've talked a lot about social care. The measures that have been announced today aren't going to solve the social care issue. People like Sarah Wollaston, a Conservative MP, have suggested that maybe national insurance will have to go up more fundamentally at some point in the next 5 years. Maybe that option, not that it's a plan, it's being left in the back pocket. But there's a clear pitch for straightforward, non-ideological leadership, and I think that is why we've got the sort of message that we have from this.
There is a gamble in this, though, in terms of who wins and who loses.
Yes, I think so. She didn't need to trouble her core bank of voters, older voters, who are overwhelmingly, if you believe the polls, going towards her party. But she has. The Conservatives successfully politically attacked Labour for the so-called death tax. But this announcement on social care, which goes into some detail in the manifesto, unlike some other areas, it does contain the notion that after an inheritance, your children might have a lesser inheritance in order to pay for your social care.
Now, Beth, you've been pursuing the other cabinet ministers here. The only one who spoke publicly was David Davies, the Brexit minister.
Yeah.
What did you gather from them in terms of their reaction?
Well, Adam, this whole campaign's been about Theresa May and her team, hasn't it? And unsurprisingly, they were led off very quickly away from journalists, filed out in single file, no questions allowed. But what I did ask all of them as they walked past, are you worried about the grey vote? Because as Faisal was just saying, Theresa May, what is Mayism? Well, there's a big dose of pragmatism in this manifesto launch. She has a huge lead in the polls, so she can go places that David Cameron never could in 2015. So she can ask pensioners to pay more because she doesn't necessarily need that vote in the way that David Cameron needed it to get over the line.
So did you get an answer? Are they worried about the grey vote?
No one answered me at all. No one said anything. But that makes sense, doesn't it? Because they want this day to be about Theresa May and her team. The team is silent, and they want it as Theresa May in a presidential pitch. So they don't need cabinet ministers challenging her on any of those policies publicly. I wonder when it comes to these pensioner perks that they're taking away, because it's not just social care and asking many, many families to pay more to social care. It's also the winter fuel allowance. It's also the triple lock on pensions. And I wondered behind the scenes how nervous many Conservatives, especially those in marginal seats, might be about it.
All right, well, thank you both very much indeed. And I'm going to ask one of those Conservatives just how nervous he is about what's been announced in just a moment, because, of course, as ever at a manifesto launch, it's not just the cabinet ministers or the shadow cabinet ministers and the press. These are also rallies attended by Conservative campaigners, the people who've got to go out on the doorstep and get that message across. And with me now is Ian Robertson, who is chairman of the Conservative Association for nearby Elmet and Rothwell. That is an area to the east of Leeds. Welcome to you, Mr. Robertson. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us. First of all, your overall reaction to what Theresa May unveiled today?
What I heard today was something that addressed the issues we're hearing on the doorsteps, the issues of social care, the issues of education, care for the elderly and the increasing elderly population, and indeed a bit on housing as well, because a lot of what we hear on the doorstep is where are we going to get the extra housing and the more affordable housing from. So
I mean, it certainly dealt with those issues, but did suggest that perhaps the better off elderly are going to have to pay more for their care, and of course they're going to lose their winter fuel payments. I mean, that's not necessarily a vote winner, is it?
Well, I think it's not necessarily going to be out in the street cheering about it, but I think the whole programme is a case of where does one set the priorities and where does one pay for them in a responsible way. So yes, I see something being taken away, which is for some the winter fuel payment, but on the other hand, a degree of assurance put back in terms of the increasing of the cap on the value of assets that one can hold before one has to pay for one's own care. So I think one's got to take it in the balance.
But it is £100,000 is protected. But I mean, that means that people in average houses, let alone people in the south of England, if things go wrong for them, if there's a catastrophe, one or two elderly parents get dementia, for example, they could be wiped out in terms of paying for that care.
Yes, but I think one has got to accept that these things are done in stages. We've seen a big move today. If Theresa May, as I believe she can deliver on the economy, then I think there'll be room to do more in the future. And while I can't commit her, I would hope she would tackle that as one of the key issues.
Now, tell us about the mood, what you're hearing on the doorstep, because it's quite unusual for a Conservative manifesto to be launched in Halifax, which has been a Labour seat since 1987. Do you really think that this area, Yorkshire, your sort of area, are really coming into play as potential Conservative wins?
We're hearing the same thing all across West Yorkshire, which is the area that I'm working in, from constituency to constituency, exactly the same message. A, we trust Theresa May and we back her, particularly we back her on Brexit. And B, we think the Conservative policies make sense. We don't think the Labour Party policies are either sensible or will be delivered. And so that's the consistent message.
So you would reckon in Yorkshire, Conservative gains of seats?
Absolutely.
Mr. Robertson, thank you very much indeed. Well, the last Conservative manifesto in 2015 promised to implement the Dilnot report that was carried out by Sir Andrew Dilnot, the statistician, on paying for care, particularly care for the elderly. That, of course, has now been dropped, and the Conservative Party is now proposing its own ideas. Well, joining me now is Sir Andrew Dilnot, the author of that report. And it is fair to say, isn't it, that this is quite a significant departure and in some areas a reversal on what you were recommending to the government?
Yes, it is. On the means test, it's rather similar. We suggested increasing the threshold to 123,000. It's going to be increased to 100,000. The details are not yet entirely clear to me. We did suggest looking at putting the value of the house into the domiciliary care means test, but we were very clear that that should only be done alongside the cap. Our key point and the key difference between these proposals and ours is that we saw that everybody is frightened of social care, and this is an area where at the moment nobody has the opportunity to control their destiny We thought that only the state could deliver that for people. That was why we suggested a form of social insurance, such that once you'd spent up to the level of the cap, the state would come in. That's not there, and I think that's a major omission.
And therefore, as far as these proposals compared to yours, people should go on being frightened of social care in old age.
Well, I think people are in a position where it is going to be frightening. If you need social care, let's imagine that you or your partner develops dementia. As things stand at the moment, and as they will be after these proposals have come into place, you stand to lose everything. So what we have in effect under these proposals is a form of inheritance tax that hits people that are unlucky enough to need substantial social care. That seems a very strange thing to do. If we want to make inheritance tax more punitive, which some people might want to do, we should make inheritance tax more punitive, not have a system that particularly targets people who are unlucky enough to have a condition like dementia or very acute arthritis.
Nobody doubts that the costs of social care are escalating. Is there a fairer way for us as a society to pay for it?
Well, I think what Mrs May's manifesto, or the Conservative Party manifesto, does is identify some areas of the package of ways in which we support pensioners and makes them less generous. And I think that's an entirely legitimate way forward. It's just that I think that rather more of that money ought to be spent on social care, so that if we're taking, for example, the winter fuel allowance and the triple lock away, things that I think make perfect sense, I think we should be doing that alongside something that makes the overall package work better for pensioners. I think we could do that without overall increasing money, as long as we were courageous and saw there was a need. This is a classic example of a market failure, and in Mrs May's Conservative Party conference speech last autumn, she said that she wanted a new world where it was clear that government would step in to do the things that individuals, communities, families couldn't do. This is one such example. Not enough, I think, is in these proposals. And I very much hope
in your
that
view,
in the
you
Green
don't
Paper
believe
process,
that this manifesto does that?
No, in my view, this manifesto makes some changes, some of which are welcome, but doesn't take the fear away from people in the area of social care. It's still the case that if you have a large social care need, there's no way that you can manage that possibility so that the risk is pooled with other people and you don't face catastrophe.
Now, Labour, as you know, by contrast, is talking about trying to make benefits and the cost of care as universal as possible. They're talking about putting 8 billion extra from taxation into the care system. In your view, what are the merits of the argument between targeting and universality?
Well, in principle, I don't think that I'm against targeting. I think targeting makes complete sense, and that's why in our proposals the cap was set at quite a high level. So it wasn't that we were expecting that individuals would be entirely paid for by the state, far from it. We expected individuals to pay in general, but if you happen to be one of the unlucky individuals, that risk should be pooled. My reading of the Labour manifesto is that they haven't really quite come down on that, because they also talk about the implementation of a cap. I think we have to recognise that making social care free for everybody would have a very, very significant cost, far greater than the £8 billion that Labour is talking about, and I'm not sure that that's in the current position a realistic objective.
Sir Andrew Durdant, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Oxford. Well, let's go now to Gloucester and an Old People's Day Centre, get reaction from the Grey vote. Sky's Rebecca Williams is there. Rebecca.